Thanks everybody for jumping on. Give everyone a minute or two here, and then I'll kind of get going. So, cool. All right. I am recording this for a handful of my athletes that said they couldn't be here, and for the some of you guys that are in the off-season training group as well. So no worries there. Let's see. All right. So I'll get going on this. Thanks for coming. Appreciate it. What I'm going to talk to you guys about today, I'm going to kind of give you some background on how this came about. I'm going to go over kind of a list of key components that I ended up writing down as part of the foundation of a bigger project on what it really takes to be successful in kind of any kind of multi-sport endeavor. But as I went through it, I started realizing that it's pretty applicable to almost anything. A lot of this stuff is anyway. And so I'm going to kind of give you some background on that. I'm going to go over this main topic, which isn't too sexy in itself, but we will anyways get into it. I'm going to give you some examples that I have observed of other athletes. I'm going to give you some examples of my athletes that I've actually worked with. And then I'll kind of get into a couple of key aspects that I think can really help. I'm going to try to go through this in the 40 minutes or so that we have. And then if people want to ask questions, I'll do a Q&A kind of after this as well. And you can just log back on. We'll see how much time we have. And if you want to post anything in the chat, we can do that too. So I'll get going with this. Basically, it was actually a few years ago. I kind of sat down and asked myself some questions as to why I saw or either had personal athletes or I observed athletes that went and just made huge gains in seemingly 1 year or a short amount of time in their sport. And I just thought to myself, I'll just identify what these are, and then I can teach those to other people, and everyone will have a much greater chance for success. It seems like an obvious thing to do. And so when I first thought of that and I started thinking about it, I actually had some trouble coming up with these characteristics, which troubled me. I thought this should be pretty easy. But as I got into it more, it started becoming less specific to actual training, and it involved a lot of other bigger picture things. And so basically, when it comes to multi-sport, but really any sport, it comes around to being, all of this ends up coming out to being very well-rounded. So we got into a pretty good discussion with it at the party that we had the other day about some particular aspects of that. But this kind of, all this stuff basically comes out to being really well-rounded. And all of these components, basically, you can think about them if you're working backwards from a great race. We start with great execution, and then we get into kind of the mental aspect and mental toughness. And then, how do you execute a great race? We go back into, well, they were really well-rounded, and this kind of leads into kind of what I'm calling the multi-sport training triad, which is kind of a circulating triangle of things that you need to do that involve finding your weakness, training your weaknesses, which leads you immediately into allocating training time wisely, which is something that as a multi-sport athlete is a very, very big aspect of what we do. And I don't think it's talked about really at all, but, and it needs to be. And basically the first step to all this is like, well, how do you do this? And one of the things I noticed about a lot of the athletes that I either observed and talked to other coaches for, or they were my athletes, is they very rarely had, kind of whatever you want to call them, no shows on workouts, failures on workouts, or really, really bad workouts. And what I mean by bad is just like, complete. And I was just talking to somebody about defining this better, but, we've all seen those people that show up to like a hard workout and it seems like it's like hit or miss, like every other workout you never know what's going to happen. These people that I've seen, they show up to these workouts all the time and they nail it. They're ready for it all the time. We can get into more of that later, but this talk in itself basically is going to be about how did they do that? How did they nail all those workouts? And it's mastering non-training time. And I was actually on a podcast and we were talking about this. One of the guys asked me about, how much into the athlete's personal life do you get? How are those other things, how important are those other things? And I said, you have to, it's a must, or someone needs to be diving into that. And when I thought about this list and how, the most successful athletes, why they are the most successful, it really came down to mastering non-training time. And then I started thinking about these athletes that I had worked with, and thinking about other athletes that I've observed at the gym. A lot of the gym I'm at, there are many, many professional athletes. There's Olympians there constantly. And in the past, I've been really fortunate to know a lot of their coaches on a pretty deep level. And so I got a little insight to what's going on, not only with training, but other aspects. And so right now for this first talk, we're going to go over this first thing, which is mastering non-training time. I've talked to a lot of my athletes, my one-on-one athletes about this. And so I'm going to give a few kind of some examples and then a couple of key aspects to how you can go about doing this better. And then we'll do some Q&A. So it shouldn't be too long. As I said, this is so important because you want to show up for any given training session and have it go the way it's supposed to go. Okay. You want to be able to nail all those workouts, even the easy ones. Sometimes, our easy workouts are really long workouts, and we want to make sure that we're able to just execute those appropriately. And even more than executing workouts really appropriately, we want to make sure that our easy workouts don't take too much out of us. And so it was earlier this summer. An example of this is I talked to a bunch of my athletes, a bunch of all the guys that were going to Kona on the boulder racing team, and some of my athletes. And I'm like, look, you guys should be doing 5-hour rides pretty regularly. This should be happening on a pretty regular basis. But I said, let's make them, they're all capable of doing this. And I said, let's make them not such a big deal, was the quote I used. And what do I mean by that? I said, let's make this good quality training, but not have it take so much out of us. How are we going to do that? And I was like, look, this basic, simple stuff, but you got to do it. Lay your clothes out for the next day. Look at the weather, make sure you're prepared. All this comes down to being prepared. Have your flat kit, know what you're going to have for nutrition, etc. Give yourself plenty of time to get to the meeting place in the morning. If you're rushing around and you don't have a vest and it's chilly out up in the mountains and you're like throwing together nutrition with what's left in the car from the last time you rode, like it's going to be an uncomfortable ride. It's going to be an uncomfortable training session. So let's try to like nail these sessions. An extreme side of that is when you go to a training camp. Imagine going to a really kind of high level training camp with people that are cooking for you, taking care of your bike and equipment. Maybe you able to get a massage. If any of you have ever done a training camp like that, it's amazing how much you can do. It's amazing how much training load that you can put on yourself and seemingly get away with it without it being that crazy. I went to a training camp one time many years ago, a cycling camp. We went to northern Georgia, where it's extremely hilly, and we did 36 hours of riding in 8 days. And it was hard. It was a lot of riding, but it didn't seem like that big of a deal. And so part of it was someone was cooking every night. Everything was taken care of. We had a great place. All we did was train, stretch, eat, sit in the hot tub. So obviously you might not have access to all that stuff all the time, but the closer you can get to that, the better. Some examples of people that, I've worked with, there was an individual that started coaching with me, and he was kind of a top 20 Ironman guy. After that year of working with him, it was Ironman Boulder he did that year, and everything went right. He had a weird schedule. He was on his feet for work a lot of the time. He had weird days off. He had Wednesday off and Sunday off, I think. And so it wasn't about this structured, systematic training. He showed up for every hard session, almost never had a bad day. There was a few times when he called me and was like, hey, like this interval workout isn't happening today. Like I'm exhausted. Okay. So we changed it. We communicated really well, changed things up a little bit last minute. He went on to do that race and be 8th overall, I think, second in his age group. The guy that won his age group won the entire race. And so big upswings like that. Other people that I've, plenty of other people too that have had similar things. I've worked with people that work really crazy schedules, or have in the past, where they're working, nights all the time and then have a week off. Some of you might know who that is. And so working around those schedules and making sure that you're ready to go kind of is super, super important. Another athlete that I've observed and was really fortunate to get to know, like I knew their coach for a long time. And one day I was sitting out by the pool deck and they said, yep, that athlete's going to do really, really well this year. And I was like, why? Expecting, oh, the numbers are going up, the paces and the run are increasing, all this other stuff. And it was none of that. He said, it was a girl, and he said, she just moved and she's got a really nice setup and she's super happy at where she lives. She had kind of a newer partner that was just really supportive, and like everything else in her life was just dialed in and everything else was perfect, and she was happier and smiling more and just being more comfortable with what she was doing and her surroundings. They had a really fun group of people to train with. And sure as shit, that year, that athlete went on to win every race that they did that year, except one. I won't get into who it is or what those races were, but this is a high level professional athlete who is an Olympian as well. And you could see it. You could see it in their training. You could see it in the way they raced. All the stuff. I can go on forever about examples of people I've watched, people that I've coached. The year that Jan Ulrich almost beat Lance Armstrong by it was like less than a minute gap. That year that past year he had a son, his partner. They're like everything in his life was great. He had a great team, great teammates. He was having a lot of fun. Had his best year ever. So we can go on forever. So you guys might be thinking of questions, and that's good. Keep them written down. So a couple of ways that we can do this, and this is something I go over with athletes from the very onset, is kind of how to plan ahead. But basically, the 4 things I wrote down are: you need to plan, you need to compartmentalize, you need to execute, and you need to communicate. And this keeps happening. This kind of keeps going back and forth. Sorry, I didn't make a fancy slide for this, but so step 1 is you need to plan. And I mentioned this just a few minutes ago, right? You need to, what am I doing tomorrow? What do I need to do to prepare for this workout? Do I need to lay out nutrition, lay out clothes? I'm sure we've all woken up and getting ready to go to a workout, and the clothes that we were going to wear are like the bottom of the hamper. Let's make sure that you're dialed with all that kind of stuff. What's the weather look like? The thing I always go over with everyone is the week, and all of my athletes have heard me say this, like on Sunday, on Monday, like sit down, look at the training, make sure you understand everything, make sure the weather looks good for all your stuff, your work schedule, like figure this out. And if there's an issue, talk to your coach, or if that's yourself or you have a coach, or that's me, whatever, like, make sure that's all squared away. Compartmentalize. So this is something that's talked about a lot. Super easy to say, and it sounds great on paper, a lot harder to do in real life, which is when you're at work, you should be at work. You shouldn't be thinking about your training. When you're training, you should be thinking about work, right? When you're at work, you shouldn't be thinking about chores you got to do at home. Like when you're at home, spending time with your friends, your family, whatever the case is, just be there. Don't be on your phone looking at Strava. Oh, what did I do compared to so-and-so? Stay focused, stay present, and compartmentalize kind of those aspects of your life that need to be compartmentalized. Execute. So this comes right from the planning, right? You've planned out your week, you've planned out your day, you've compartmentalized your day so you're not stressed out. You've got a lot done at work, spent time with family, whatever the case is. Now comes time to execute. Show up to the track, you show up to the workout, right? You're ready to go. So Brian does this super well. As an example, he's on this call. Every time we have track, and a lot of my athletes do this, but Brian lives relatively close to where we run, and people will be warming up, and sometimes it's like, where's Brian? And he comes rolling in, finishes his warm-up jog right as we're going to start drills, right? He knows what time we're going to be there. He knows what time he needs to be there. He knows exactly how long it's going to take him to get there. He's got water with him, ready to go, right? We've done sessions when it's really hot out and people come prepared. There's a cooler. I've got a cold bottle of water to pour over me. I've got plenty of hydration to drink before and maybe during. So execute the day, stay focused on what you're doing, and then communicate. So this comes in all aspects, and I think this leads right back into the planning part, which is communicate with your coach, communicate to the other coach. So a lot of, some of you guys, even on this call, there's a lot of people that I work with at the pool or at the track that I don't necessarily coach one-on-one. Communicate with, the coach that's there, that's running the swim or the track workout, whatever it is. If you're feeling good or if you're feeling bad, or if sometimes you might be late, communicate with your coach, rearrange things as you need to, make adjustments so that all of those workouts can be as good as possible. If you had a bad day, right, got to let people know. Can't show up to a track workout half sick, not tell anybody until it's over and go, hey, I suck today because I'm sick. And it's like, right, You got to communicate these things. People got to know. Coaches got to know. Your training partners should know. Maybe this is just a communication thing with training partners. Nothing worse than going out for an easy ride and having people just half wheel you the whole time. That's no good either. So communicate with all of those people. How you're feeling. What are you supposed to do today? There's a lot of times where people get together for group workouts, a group ride in particular, and a few people have different intervals to do at different times, or, whatever the case is. Communicate. If everyone knows that you need to do some interval work at a certain point in time, then it's not a big deal. Everyone can help accommodate that. So those are the 4 keys to kind of mastering your non-training time. I mean, we could get into this forever. A life coach could get into this for a long time, right? There's a lot of different ways to go about doing this. And so not only questions, guys and girls, but if you have anything that you've done, also maybe write this down, or we can ask this in the Q&A here. If you've had something that works really well, let's hear about it. So if you guys want to hear more examples about why this is so good, or maybe help clarify the semantics of not having a bad workout, never having a bad workout. Some people have pushed back on me on that a little bit, so we can clarify that if you want to. And then, what's that?
I said, I'll kick it off.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's hear it.
Yeah. So like one thing that you said to me a couple of months ago that just like really clicked for me was you said like the easy sessions need to stay easy and the hard sessions need to be like executed perfectly. And like in my head, that allowed me to like prepare for workouts differently. And it didn't mean that like I took the easy sessions, like I was like lazy about them, but like it just helped me like ration out my mental energy with the session going into it.
Yes.
And then it also like allowed me to recognize like, if I felt like I didn't do a session right, like there's a more of an emphasis on like a 30-30 track workout not going right, rather than like for some reason a ride didn't go well or an easy ride or something like that. So it's like kind of in the direction of what you're already saying, but like that was something you shared a couple months ago that like really clicked for me.
Yeah, that's a great point to talk about. And different workouts have a different take, something different from the athlete mentally, physically. And I've worked with people who, when you see, I brought this up the other day at the party too, when you see these people, every single workout they do, you can see the stress in them. Like, oh my God, I have my swim workout written down. This is going to be so hard, and it's like Monday morning. And I'm like, it's like, God, like what, like this must be so horrendous for you to train like this every single workout. And so, yeah, some workouts should be like when we go to the track, like I'm going to the track and I know this is going to be hard and I better pay attention and like nail this because this is going to take some thinking. But there might be other workouts where you don't really have to ride that much, and I give people an easy 45-minute run or like an easy 90-minute bike ride. And it's like, well, what should I be doing? What should I be focused on? I'm like, just go do it. Like, just go have fun. Right. And I write that down a lot in Training Peaks. Have fun. Like, just kind of go do the thing. We don't need to stress ourselves out today. And that's one of the things that I like about group workouts or just master swim classes for people that I don't get to coach directly is you get to go and, be social and have a little fun and not have to think about what workout you're doing or self-motivate for it. That's what I always liked about masters is I was like, I'm going to think about what I'm doing, but I'm just going to kind of do what I'm told. And usually if the coach is good, by the time it starts to get really hard, you're almost done. And then you can kind of go on with your day, as opposed to just being at work, like looking at this swim set that someone gave you, and like, I'm just being like, ugh, like, what does this mean? I gotta call Eric and figure out what this means. That's just takes a lot of mental stress, puts on a lot of non-training stress on you that um, that you shouldn't that we don't want to accumulate. So yeah, different workouts have different levels of kind of mental workload and physical workload. It's a really good point, Ryan. Thanks.
I've got a thing that kind of piggybacks on that. Hi Al, I'm like 50-50 whether I know you all or not, but that Eric and I just had our 10-year anniversary of working together, so it's kind of cool. And so probably about 9.5 years ago, one thing that he told me, it was probably one of the most pivotal things like that I heard again in like this whole like life training, executing as an athlete, was he was like, nobody cares how tough you are. And right, it was one of those, it was really of like the like save the grit for when it matters. Because right, it's like we only have like so much grit. And so it's just like if we're expending it all like every day, like executing, being tough, training through, injury, that was kind of what was going on at the time. It's like you're not going to have it for when it matters. And so it's like going into this off-season time, and kind of what Eric put in his email is like, that little bit of like, if you don't like feel like doing something, like have a conversation, and where like I would say like I really started to like grow and evolve as that athlete and start to achieve really great things was like really taking advantage of those communication schedule, availability, and just like talking through stuff, and training very hard, right? The whole like don't be tough like isn't a cop out. Like it's just about like use it where it matters. And those were just very pivotal words for me that, in my early athlete days.
Yeah. Yeah, I get choked up when you tell that story, Liz. It's and this has happened with other people too. And some of it can just be it can originate from different places. Some people want to be overly competitive all the time, and some people want to make sure they're living up to some certain standard that they've put there for themselves, or they feel I've put there for themselves, or their coach has, or their other training partners have. And sometimes it's just a lack of communication and some stubbornness. And so, and Liz, I think this was part of your case, was it was like something's on the schedule, like I need to complete it, like this needs to be checked off perfectly. And it's like we have more resources than that. This isn't about putting our head down and kicking down every door that comes up. It's like, hey, let's have a conversation and figure out if we should kick this door down, or if we should just go in this other door that's wide open right next to it. And so like I've said, it's not about, I've told probably everyone this in one way or the other, is it's not about completing everything and doing everything super hard and super fast. It's about doing everything right. And sometimes doing things right means going home after work and drinking a glass of wine and relaxing. And we'll pick this up on the next day. Other times it's, hey, get it done. And so that example of that guy that did really well at Boulder Ironman that year, there was a couple of times when he really started getting into this. And he said, he was like, hey, tomorrow, I got to be at work a little earlier than normal. You've got like a 5-hour ride for me. I think he like went into work at noon one day or something. I forget, it was a while ago. And he was like, do you want me to get it done, or do you want me to adjust? And I said, well, and it was like a conversation. I'm like, look, like how much is this gonna, I don't want this to stress you out. I don't want you to go ride the course 500 times before the race and like wear yourself out on it. And he's like, no, I can do it. Like, getting up like a little earlier is fine. I'll have time. He's like, I'm going to bring snacks and stuff to work so I don't get behind on anything. And I was like, okay, do it. There are other similar examples where people are like, hey, I got to do this and that and the other thing, and do you still want me to do this workout? And I'm like, no, take the day off. and it depends. Maybe they were sick last week. They're just coming back around. It's November. It's not July. And so a lot of my athletes right now are, they'll call me or ask me something. Hey, can I move this? Right? Like, Liz, you just did this. You're like, can I move these workouts? And I'm like, yep. Like, I didn't even look at the schedule. I'm like, fine. And you actually have a big race coming up, but I know that exactly where we're at with everything. So, it's like, so the situation's always a little bit different. So, that's another really good one. And it's true. No one cares how tough you are. No one cares, about how you like push through a track workout when your ankle was killing you or your hamstring was pulled or, doing a workout too hard, so that you could go fast for, a Strava segment or something. You should care about your race results, and how you feel overall. So in life, and that means doing things right and doing the easy stuff easy and executing the hard stuff perfectly, like Ryan said. So, any other tactics for mastering non-training time or questions or anything like that?
I have a question related to what we've just been talking about with like, you're kind of 50-50 on whether your day's going well or you can fit it in a workout. Do you tend to err on the side of caution and be like more willing to cut out a workout or cut it short or so that like you always have a good workout when you do it? Or do you sometimes kind of risk it like, well, 50-50 shot, this could go well, but we're going to try it. But then you might end up with a bad workout. So what do you think about, like being more risky versus cautious in deciding whether to do a hard workout if you might not be ready?
That's a really good question. And I'm going to answer it. And then if anyone else wants to answer it too, I feel like we might have some other opinions on this as well. But it's definitely like a range, right? It's not like a one or the other, obviously, kind of what you're saying. And so I think it's really, and this is a lot of what I do coaching and what other coaches do coaching, is we're constantly running this risk reward scale in our head, which is, what's the risk of doing this? What's the drawback, the fatigue, all this other stuff? And what's the reward? What are we getting out of this? Like, is it worth it? Is it worth the risk? And so your classic example is, as you get closer and closer to the race and you get into taper mode and closer to taper mode, it's like, what's the benefit that I'm going to actually get out of this workout 3 weeks before my race? And it's like, well, almost nothing. And what's the benefit? It's like, or, what's the risk? Like, could overtrain, it might get hurt, whatever. And so I think starting with that is a good idea. And so my 2 cents on this is, if it's a harder workout, if it's a workout that's going to press you on a good day, then you're going to be more likely to put it off, because it's probably more likely to go bad. Whereas an easy workout, you might not feel great, your numbers might not be great, but that's okay a lot of the times for the easier workouts, and you can kind of do it. And then we get into aspects of, maybe just going on feel or cutting a workout short, things like that. But harder workout, probably more likely to push it back or reschedule it. Easier workout, probably more likely to kind of do it. That's my kind of 2 cents on there. I don't know if anyone else has any thoughts on that one.
The only thing I would add is, for me, like, whether, if my day isn't lining up the way I wanted to, or, my legs are feeling more tired than I would like them to, my sort of current mental state and state of motivation will feed in a lot as to whether or not I decide to do it anyway. Because I feel like if you beat yourself down too much and let that hit your mental motivation get too low, like it'll take you an inordinate amount of time to like get back into that positive mental state. But if you're already in like a really gung-ho positive mental state, and yeah, it's going to be non-ideal in your schedule or you're feeling really tired, you know, I might choose to do it anyway. But if I'm already being like, you know, just not really feeling with it mentally, then I'm more likely to cancel.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good checkpoint, you know, like I'm feeling tired, but I'm super motivated. Yeah, that might be kind of another piece of the puzzle there for sure. You might feel fine physically, but you might not be motivated. You might be super stressed out from work, you know, life, whatever, the economy, I don't know. And maybe it's just not a great day for you to go and push it. So motivation goes a long way. Yeah, that's good, Ed. Thanks.
I think there's the whole, like, having that frame mindset too around like what defines a good workout. And right, if it's live and die by like the metrics on the table, right, you might like line up for like more bad workouts, like then, but if sometimes, like, I remember this was a couple years ago, this pro athlete, who's forever been a pro, posted, tweeted about like, if you have to peel yourself out of bed to train, you're probably better off taking the rest. And I like laughed. I was like, that's cute. I was like, I would never train. Like was in a permanent state of tired, like balancing work and life. And I was like, I get what they're trying to say, but like to, the 90% of us balancing, work and training, like that's a pipe dream. But that it does come with like, sometimes that how do you pull off that good workout, has a shift in expectation versus in shift in execution. So right, like, you could have, in one sense, you go out to do a workout and your numbers are just absolute garbage. But that if you can start listing out, like, what are the positives from this? Like, did you, were you able to rally motivation? How did you feel despite what the number said? Like there's a lot of ways to like frame what good and bad means besides like live and die by pace, power, heart rate.
Yeah, that's a really great point, Liz. I think I probably okay. I missed telling everybody that hopefully everyone will get back on. I think everyone's getting back on. Sorry about missing that cut off. Thought I had a few more seconds. All right, we got some people back here. Ryan, maybe text that buddy of yours, let him know. So Liam's back on. Yeah, sorry about that. I think that's another good point, is like defining what does success mean, right? So does success mean having to PR on every single workout? No. Sometimes just getting it done is going to be, more than adequate. And so, there's been, there's been actually, Liz, I think of this one time when we, Liz did, I think we were doing intervals on Monarch Road, and you finished the workout and we're kind of like, that didn't go very well. Like, I thought it was going to be faster, blah, blah, blah. But I had written down the workout that we did, because we did the exact workout like earlier in the spring. And I was like, these are your splits from before. And you were 45 seconds a mile faster on every single interval, and you were like, oh. And so that's a really good reason just to keep a training log for everyone, whether it's in Training Peaks or, somewhere else. And I always tell all you guys and all my athletes to write down notes on how stuff felt, because sometimes you do a ride, same ride or something, long run maybe, and you do it and you're like, oh, that wasn't any faster, like that wasn't a good workout. But then you go and look back when you did it 6 weeks ago or 3 months ago, and you're like, oh, I did a similar time, but I wrote down here that it was like the hardest thing I'd ever done, and now it's not such a big deal. So there can be all kinds of different you know uh what does success mean for a workout? So that's a good one. So yeah, I don't know if anyone else has any thoughts on that, something that they did that they thought, this is successful for today, and it might not necessarily be considered that on paper. Good stuff. So keeping track of your training and all that kind of stuff can be super important for that reason. That's another good reason to really keep those notes on just how you feel and all that kind of stuff. So anything else, any other questions or comments, thoughts, etc.? I like hearing from you guys. Cool. All right. Nice.
Yeah, I just wanted to quickly introduce myself. My name is Adam Holtz. I'm friends with Ryan and Chelsea, who invited me to this. So it's a pleasure to meet you guys, albeit via Zoom. But yeah, Eric, just to your last point about like when to balance doing the workout or maybe backing off. Something that I've thought about is like I ask myself the question, if I loved myself, what would I do? And it sounds kind of corny, but like some days honoring yourself is backing off, taking a rest day. Maybe if you're overly fatigued or you feel sick or you're prone to injury. And then some days loving yourself is lacing up your shoes and getting out the door. So just finding that balance is often easier for me when I ask myself that question. And then a question I do have is, what are your thoughts on, or I guess, how do you balance the quote unquote off season? Like, how do you allow for cross training? And like, we live in Colorado, people like to ski, people like to climb, like to hike, and like throw all those things in. I mean, I imagine it's more than acceptable when the next race may not be until late spring, early summer, but wanted to hear your thoughts and philosophy around that.
Yeah, I mean, I think, well, I mean, I'll take the coach, performance approach to it first, which is your actions need to meet what your goals are, or you're going to be disappointed. And so if you have a race in April and you want to win or qualify for something or, a championship, then, you're going to need to take appropriate measures over the winter to achieve that goal. But that's more of that's, that goes both ways. Maybe your goals are too high, right? And so maybe you should, pick a different race. So it has to do a lot with expectations that you're setting for yourself, goal setting properly, and just scheduling. And on the scheduling point, I tell this to athletes all the time, where they're like, should I do this? Should I do that? Like, is this bad to do? And I'm like, if we plan ahead for it, we can do almost anything. So I just had an athlete do a 6-day biking tour in Italy, I think, where they were riding like 4 hours a day for a week, and then an off week, and then a marathon. And her whole focus for the year was this marathon. So, you know, and I'm like, look, like this is not ideal, but we can do it, you know. And she PR'd at the marathon. She wanted to do a little bit better, but we still figured it out, you know. And so that's true with ski trips in the winter and watching football and pumpkin spice lattes and the whole thing, right? So Brian goes for the pumpkin spice lattes year round. He doesn't care what season it is. But yeah, like, you know, take the ski trip. You know, go on the you know, whatever you do in the fall, whatever you want to do in the winter. And you know, work it into the schedule, figure out kind of how to make it work. I think that a lot of athletes get really worked up on what if I go away for this long weekend, I'm going to miss the group trainer session, and I'm going to get back and be tired, and you know, what's going to happen. And it's like, you got to think bigger picture, and that's what a coach is for, training partners are for. And just staying consistent with really minimal stuff is will go a really, really long way. A really long way. I had a guy, as an example for this, I had an athlete who was doing a lot of different stuff in the winter, a lot of different sports in the winter. And he swam, but sometimes he was swimming once a week. A lot of the time he was swimming once a week and like only 1,500 yards. And he's a pretty good swimmer. It wasn't like a collegiate swimmer or anything like that, but he's a reasonably good swimmer. He went to St. George, 70.3. That spring, you know, that's in May, as you guys know, and had a top 20 overall swim time, like one of his best swims ever. And so, you know, it wasn't like he just ramped way up and started training super, super hard. He didn't do that. It just kind of stayed consistent. And then as spring rolled around and the winter stuff stopped going away, it just got a little bit more consistent with everything else, you know, all the normal triathlon training. So
I think just like to speak to that a little bit, EK, like, so I just did Ironman Florida, and we had like so many weddings within like my 12-week buildup or whatever.
Yeah.
And I actually like wasn't able to do any of the big rides. Like I didn't really do any I think I did a couple 5 hours, but none of them within like 7 or 8 weeks of my race. And so like we were still able to piece it together with like 3 and 3 on a couple weekend Saturdays and Sundays. But overall, like having me like rested and feeling really good going into that race set me up to have my best race ever.
Mhm.
Even though like if you go back and like look at my training peaks and just be like, what volume did this person do versus another participant, like it might look wildly different. So like I feel like one evolution of my thinking since teaming up with you is that like there's a lot more that goes into having a really great race day rather than like needing to hit every single session and skip out on the ski weekend or not go to the wedding or whatever else.
Yeah. Yeah. Form will outdo fitness every day of the week, most of the time. But what I mean by form is just being, you know, having really good legs and having a really good day, being at 100%, will kind of outdo that, you know, overly fit person that might be a little bit worn out. And so, yeah. And you had a lot of stuff come up, and I remember getting into that race, and then we had a conversation. I looked back at your schedule and I was like, Jesus, we haven't done a long run in like 5 weeks or 6 weeks or something. I was kind of worried, but yeah, we made it work. So yeah. Anything else? Anyone else before we wrap this up? And I look at all the nasty emails I got from everyone that got thrown off of the call.
I was just gonna say one quick thing about going back to, you know, do you train on a bad day, or, you know, when you have a lot of stuff going on, and like how you make it work. Two of the things that I have started implementing since working with a new coach this year, which has been really helpful, is like setting an intention before each of my sessions. So like, what do I want to get out of this session? You know, if I'm feeling stressed, or maybe I have to work out later in the day when I normally like to work out earlier, like what does my intention for this session and executing on that intention. So if it's like a swim session, it's like, okay, just make sure that I go in fueled and I'm focusing like strictly on my form and not necessarily my pace. Things like that have been really helpful for me. And yeah, just asking myself, like, during a session, what do I have to do to be my best self? Like, there have been some rides that I start out really great, and then whatever, for some reason, whatever it might be, either I'm not fueling enough, or I haven't had enough electrolytes, like I start to not feel great. So it's like, okay, what do I have to do to make myself feel better and to be my best self? Maybe that's like focusing on my cadence or drinking more water, whatever it might be. And those have been really helpful cues for me.
Yeah, that's really good feedback, Chelsea. I like that. Like, what are my intentions for this workout? You know, not even goals, right? I don't need to achieve anything, but like, what am I working on? What am I doing? And that might be to, you know, simply get it done, or it might involve a little bit more, like you said, working on your cadence, or if there's some particular aspect, you know, right? Maybe like your fueling, you need to, you know, stay on top of fueling better on long bike rides or long runs or something like that. Like, it might be a little, just that one thing that you're working on. So I think that goes a long way. You know, it makes me think some remote athletes I've had with swimming, and I'd give them swim workouts. And there's a few times where there's a few seasons where I had people like text me or call me either the night before or literally right before they were going to the workout. And they were like, what am I focusing on? And I would be like, do this drill. I want you focusing on this thing for most of the, right? Or when you're doing this main set, try and do it this way instead of just, you know, I think that's kind of a similar, you know, a similar kind of thing what you're talking about there, which is, yeah, I think it can be really effective. I think a lot of people, like a lot of athletes, just end up out there and they're like, what am I doing? Like, a lot of training plan athletes, actually, I get a lot like calls or have conversations with people that like bought a training plan and they're just like, I don't know why I'm doing this. Like, what is, you know, they're just kind of like out there, like, I don't, you know, so yeah, that could probably go a really long way. That's really good. So cool. Anything else? Awesome. Listen, I got this recorded, so I'm going to put it up on like a private YouTube channel, and I'll send everyone the link, you guys and the other people that were on that missed the last part of our Q&A. But I really like this. I like hearing from other people. And so I think maybe I'll do these other ones as, you know, just trying to get as many people on as we can and have kind of a conversation, just as much as, you know, me dictating. So that's really good. It's good to hear from all you guys. Some good stuff there. Yeah, well, I'm going to wrap this one up and